this video, we want to look at speed math, fast percents mentally calculated. In other words, how can we calculate percents quickly in our head without paper? This is my method. It's not something that's taught in a book anywhere. I made it myself. Perhaps other people have made the same method. It's highly likely somebody has. Maybe it will help you. So my method depends on 10% and 1%. So let's say you have a number like 48, and I want you to find 10% of it. How do you find 10% of a number? Most people will say divide by 10 or multiply by 0.1. Those are both correct answers, but that's not really the fastest way to think of it mentally. The fastest way is simply move the decimal point. So 10% of 48 is 4.8. Then the thing is, if I want something like 40%, how would I get 40%? Well, you just need to think of 40% as equal to 4 times 10%. So as soon as you say 4.8 is 10%, multiply it by 4, 16 and 3.2 is 19.2. Again, for mental calculation, do not go right to left. Don't do 4 times 8 first, do 4 times 4. 4 times 4 is 16, 4 times 0.8 is 3.2. Add those in your head to get 19.2. So what if you wanted, I don't know, 30% of, let's say, a nice number like 70? As soon as you see 30% or you hear 30%, you should be thinking 3 times. And then as soon as they say the number or you read the number, you move the decimal place and multiply. It's simply 3 times 7, which is 21. Okay, what if it's not a nice number? Again, let's say I want 30% of 73, right? So again, what's 30%? It's 3 times 10%, which is 7.3. So you do 3 times 7 to get 21, 3 times 0.3 to get 9. It's 21.9. Okay, so that's good so far. Let's look at what happens when there's a 5 involved, something like 15% of. So if I give you 15% of, let's do 72, then 10% is 7.2, and you want to think of the extra 5% as simply half of 10%. In other words, find 10% and add it to half of 10%. 7.2 plus 3.6 is 10.8. Okay, let's practice that again. What if you had 15% of 90? It would just be 9 plus half of 9 is 13.5. Okay, let's do something that involves a 1%. Let's say I've got 12% of 17. How do you do 12% of 17? Of course, you can simply multiply 12 by 17 and move the decimal place 2 to the left. That's fine if you're quick with that. For me, what I like to do is 10% is 1.7 and 1% is 0.17. So I just simply take 1.7 and add 0.34 to get 2.04. Okay, what if you have a not nice percent, but a nice number you're taking the percent of? Let's say you need 17% of 30. Well, you could do the trick we learned up here, but actually there's a faster way for something like this. What's actually true is that this is the same thing as 30% of 17, which is 3 times 1.7, which is 5.1. Okay, why does that work? Because 17% of is 17 over 100 times 30. And 30% of is 30 over 100 times 17. Notice the numerators are the same and the denominator is the same. So I can simply shift the 100 over to the 30 and it becomes 30% of 17, thereby giving us a nice percent of a not nice number. This is typically faster for the average student to calculate than the above one was. As a reminder, what does percent mean? It's literally per, which is a ratio. If I say 14%, I mean 14, and cent is 100. So 14%, 14 over 100. That's what we're doing with the previous calculation. Okay, so how can you apply this? Ways that you can practice your percents to quickly utilize them. If you're taking a test in school and there's 32 questions, I don't know about you, but the number one question I always want to know on a test is how many can I get wrong and still get an A, which for most people or many good students is the only acceptable grade or the only desirable grade. So if you're trying to get a A on a test with 32 questions, you need to get 90% or better, which means you can only miss 10%. We simply move the decimal place over to get 3.2. That's how many you can miss, which is really just 3 questions. Same thing, 48 questions. You can miss 4.8. If the teacher's going to round up for you, then maybe you can miss 5 for that test. That's about it for that. So let's give a random problem. This problem from an AMC says if 20% of 12 is, what is 30%? No, 20% of a number is 12. What is 30% of the same number? So 20% of a number is 12. Again, if 20% is 12, what's 10%? Half of 12, it's 6. So 30% is 3 times 6, which is 18. So utilizing these tricks can really help you calculate percents in a much faster way than perhaps you're used to. If you get something like 14.73% of 91.8 pi, okay, you're not calculating that in your mind. You're going to need a calculator for stuff like that. This does not apply for these kinds of calculations with ridiculous decimals and other symbols like pi or whatnot. That's about it. I hope you enjoyed it and I hope it's helpful.